My name's Victor. I'm an addict. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody that put this on, and I'd like to thank Phil for inviting me up here. And most of all, I would like to say how truly grateful I am for the Narcotics Anonymous program, how truly grateful I am that my higher power has given me a seat in these rooms. I can't express my gratitude enough. I don't think there's words that I can say that can express the gratitude that I have for the life that this program has given me. To qualify myself a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I grew up. I was born in South Philly. I commuted in my early years between there and Wilmington because my grandparents lived in Wilmington. My mom was young when she had me. She was relatively young. And my father, my real father, was never around. I never knew him. I never met him. Later, it wasn't until I was like 20-some years old that I found out what his name was. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my mom raised me the best that she could, but she was young and she was single. So when we moved from Philly to Wilmington, after a period of time, she let me live with my grandparents because they were more stable, I think. This is what I got from her, but, you know, I don't think back then I could understand really what was going on. You know what I mean? It wasn't until later in life that I figured out why she did what she did. But anyway, to make a long story a little short, my grandparents, you know, they really loved me like their own child. You know what I mean? And my grandfather only wanted the best for me. He sent me to Catholic school, which, you know, I first went to public school, and then when I got to like the 5th grade, he sent me the 4th grade, he sent me from 5 to 8 to Catholic school, which was middle school back then. But, you know, and he worked hard, man. He was a custodian in the schools. Before that, he was a shipbuilder. But he worked real hard for his money, and all he wanted was the best for me, you know what I mean? So I went to school, and I got kicked out of Catholic school at the end, and I ended up going back to public school. And when I went back to public school, like, you know, I can remember early as age 12, you know, the big thing back then was huff and glue, and back in the 70s was huff and glue and lighter fluid and whatever would make you high, you know what I mean? It was weed around back then, and I wasn't really into smoking weed, but I can remember, you know, with the kids in the neighborhood, that everybody was stuck on that for a great period of time, you know what I mean, until weed became more prevalent, and then I started smoking weed like everybody else. But the main thing that I remember is, you know, I always wanted to be a part of something, be a part of what was going on in the neighborhood, be a part and accepted by the people that was in the neighborhood, and I just wanted to be, I guess, loved and accepted, you know what I mean? And, you know, I can remember my first time drunk drinking Mad Dog and vodka and passed out because we was in a row house and there was a banister between the neighbor's house and our house. And I remember being passed out across the banister, my next door neighbor waking me up and my grandfather coming in the house and beat the shit out. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't for all that. You know what I mean? He tried to tell me and so he was a hard man. He was real hard. He had hands big like a tree trunk. You know what I mean? So if he hit you, you knew what was happening. Or you better learn what was happening real quick. But that's what he did, you know what I mean? And he just wanted to test me. And that man, he loved me like his own son. And I continued to use. I didn't think I had a problem at all, you know what I mean? It was drinking and it was smoking weed back then. And that was all it was. Everybody was doing it. So I thought that was the thing to do. But little did I know that, you know, I guess as a child, I mean, I think all people have a little bit of addiction in them, but it carries some further than others. You know what I mean? So for me, I wanted more. You know what I mean? That's all I wanted, more and more. And I started to do things because of that, like stealing. I stole tens of thousands of dollars from my grandparents. You know what I mean? And I'm really truly ashamed of what I did to them. They're no longer here, and I can't make amends to them, but I know that they see what I'm doing now, and I think they accept me for that. You know what I mean? I have a hard time on myself. I'm real hard on myself about a lot of things that I'm not proud of. You know, my disease took me through a lot of shit, and I mean a lot of shit. I used to go back and forth to Philly all the time and do dumb stuff. I'm not going to talk about all the stuff that I did in my addiction, really, because there's no point in it. The one thing that I will say is I was introduced to NA like back in 1980. I went to my first rehab when I was 18 years old, and, you know, it didn't work. Obviously, it didn't work. It was another 30-some years before I finally surrendered and got clean. I didn't know what surrender was. You know what I mean? It took so long for me to come to my knees and beg God to remove this disease from me or help me through this disease. Real quick, I want to go back to the beginning. Like, I want to read something out of the How It Works and Why on the first step, because it's relevant to me in my daily recovery. Like the first three steps are really relevant to me. I'm a little further along with that in my step work, but I want to read this because just take a couple minutes and maybe we can reflect on this a little bit, and then I'll tell the rest of my story. The process of recovery isn't easy. It takes great courage and perseverance to continue in recovery day after day. Part of the recovery process is to move forward in spite of whatever may stand in our way. Because long-lasting change in recovery happens slowly, we will turn to the first step again and again. Even long periods of abstinence do not guarantee us continued freedom from the pain and trouble that addiction can bring. The symptoms of our disease can always return. We may find that we are powerless in ways we never imagined. This is where we begin to understand how the things we tried so hard to control are, in reality, completely beyond our control. No matter how our disease displays itself, we must take its deadly nature into account. As we do, we develop a fuller awareness of the nature of our disease. The disease of addiction can manifest itself in a variety of mental obsessions and compulsive actions that have nothing to do with drugs. We sometimes find ourselves obsessed with and behaving compulsively over things we may never have had problems with until we stop using drugs. We may once again try to fill the awful emptiness we sometimes feel with something outside of ourselves. Anytime we find ourselves using something to change the way we feel, we need to apply the principles of the first step. We are never immune from having our lives become unmanageable, even after years of recovery. If problems pile up and our resources for coping with them dwindle, we may feel out of control and in too much pain to do anything constructive for ourselves. We feel overwhelmed by life, and that feeling seems to make everything worse. When our lives seem to be falling apart, we reapply ourselves to the basics of the NA program. We stay in close contact with our sponsor, work the steps, and go to meetings. We surrender again, knowing that victory lies in the admission of defeat. There is a deeply spiritual nature to our program of recovery. The 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous will take us on a journey that will far exceed our expectations. Working and living the steps will lead us to a spiritual awakening. Step 1 is the beginning of this spiritual journey. To get started on this journey, you must become willing to surrender to this program and its principles, for our future hinges on our willingness to grow spiritually. For me, that's a big part, because I always had, like, when I was younger, I was always into God and into Jesus, and it played a big part of my life. I went to Catholic school, like I said, so I was introduced to religion early on. But as my disease progressed when I was younger, I threw all that out the window. I stopped doing the things that I used to do involved with God. I didn't go to church. I didn't work on nothing. The only thing I was working on was getting high and stealing money and stealing shit from people that love me. You know what I mean? And that's what I did for all of my teenage years, pretty much, back and forth. You know, I was thinking the other day, and I remember taking, my grandfather used to hide cash around the house, and I used to take it just to go out and spend it on other people so they would love me, or they would come to me and say, oh man, you're the man, you're this, you're that, when they really didn't give a fuck about me for nothing. You know what I mean? They didn't care about me from Adam. They just wanted what I had in my pocket. That's all they wanted. So as the disease progressed, you know, I got worse and worse. I started getting in trouble. I got locked up my first time, and this is part of why I went to rehab at 16 from stealing from Sears. You know, I was a juvenile, but all that got thrown out the window because my grandfather paid for the lawyer to have it was taken care of. But I continued to get worse and worse. And finally, in my early 20s, I caught my first bit in 5 years for burglarizing a house. To get money, try to take a safe out of somebody's house to get money for drugs. I went to jail, did my time, got out. I was introduced to a program down there. I stayed clean for a year, and it still didn't work. I went to a 90-day program. They let me out. I went to this program in Delaware called the TASK program, where you got to pee every week for like a year. I graduated that, went in front of the judge. The judge said, "Congratulations." I walked in the door and went and got up. That's how bad it was. I couldn't stop. I could not stop. I didn't know how to stop. I knew about Narcotics Anonymous. I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, but I never had, I don't think that I really thought that I had a problem for a long period of time. Finally, in my 30s, I finally started to get it that something's wrong. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't live my life in a manageable way. I'm going through jobs, starting to steal again, and everything. I had periods of clean time and periods of time where I did well, but it always came back to the drugs. And when I started using drugs, it always started with drinking. That's where it started. That was the catalyst for everything for me. You know, in my younger years, I felt so ashamed of the stuff that I did to my grandfather. I took my grandfather through cancer treatment at Johns Hopkins, and he had a kind of successful treatment, but after I brought him back home, he fell down the stairs, and he hit his head, and he died. I wasn't there for that. I was out using. Back in the day, my first hard drug was methamphetamine, and I was injecting because that's what everybody else was doing. I like to do what everybody else was doing. You know what I mean? That's how I was. To move on a little bit more, you know, my 30s was rough, in and out of jail. I did a lot of time in jail, man, on an installment plan. You know, I probably did at least 15, 17 years in jail on an installment plan. And I never really learned nothing from it. They tried to help me. The help was there. And I wouldn't take none of this into consideration at all. You know, when I was younger, a lot of people was using heroin, and I always said to myself, I said, man, I'll never use heroin. Never. Don't mean I was into other things, but this shit comes full circle all the time. You know what I mean? And lo and behold, the last time I got high, which I remember very well because I went and robbed somebody to get high, I was using heroin. So what I thought I would never do, I ended up doing anyway. I can't. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. When I committed this robbery for the dope for heroin, I got caught. It was a matter of time, but I got caught. They wanted to put me in jail for the rest of my life because I'm a habitual offender. So what happened was, I talked to a prosecutor, and he explained to me what was going to happen. Just go in and do the trial, and you're going to get found guilty because of the evidence we got. So I did that. He said, we're not going to recommend the life sentence, make you sign habitual offender papers, but we're going to give you 25 years. So I went in there, I did what he said to do, signed a couple papers. They gave me 25 years, but the judge had I talked for myself with the judge, and I begged her to give me a shot. This was my last shot, and for some reason, he gave me 25, suspended after doing 10 years, and gave me a drug treatment program in Delaware prison. It's actually a behavioral modification program. So I started out down there, and as I went into prison, I surrendered. That was my surrendering point, because I was 41. Took all that time for me to get to my knees and surrender to something that I didn't know how to stop doing. I begged God to remove it from me. I went into jail. It took me like 4 years to get into this program. I never used it the whole time I was in jail. So I count that as my clean time start date. in June of 2006. When I finally got to the program, I completed the program. The program is a 6-month behavioral modification program. I did really well in the program. I helped introduce Narcotics Anonymous in there because I knew about Narcotics Anonymous, and we had a couple outside meetings, but we brought it more into the program and implemented it in the program. We had NA meetings on the tiers because you couldn't get off the tiers. So there was a couple guys that had a lot of clean time in there that worked the program. So we all got together and we started running meetings inside this drug program. So we were running meetings, and I started to get a knack for. I really feel like I'm kind of out of my element here because I never spoke in front of this large of a crowd, but I do feel it in small groups. I'm a little nervous, but anyway, I started helping other people that looked like they wanted to be helped, that had a desire to help. Because there's a lot of people in jail that don't have a desire to do nothing. Everybody ain't always working on the same thing, and I found that to be true. I don't like to admit it a lot of times, but it is the truth. They asked me to stay on after I completed the program and to be a group facilitator. So I did that. I ended up taking a 16-year behavioral modification program, and I turned it into, I stayed 5 years until I was released. I helped a lot of people dealing with a lot of things that I was dealing with. What I didn't realize was not only did I have a drug problem, I have a me problem. Most of all was the me problem. Now I'm trying to deal with the things, the feelings, and the emotions inside of me because I was so angry with myself. And I couldn't forgive myself for all the shit that I put my people through. I had a hard time dealing with that, and it was making me angry, and it was driving me to not be happy with myself, number one. You know what I mean? And how could I help somebody else if I'm not happy with what I'm doing? But even still, I'm a big fan of the literature because my sponsor is a big fan of the literature. Not just because of that, but because I read the literature, and I do the step work because it helps me free me from me. I'm my biggest enemy, pretty much, because of the thoughts and the emotions that I got going on inside me that sometimes I don't want to deal with. I'm learning how to deal with them now when life shows up on a day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? I take things day by day. I don't project shit down the road because I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow. I thank God every day that I wake up and that I breathe the air that I breathe. Working through the steps is helping me to deal with my emotions and feelings so much and deal with all the anger. I still get angry spouts and I still have problems on a day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? There's things that I get in feelings and moods and I get in this and I get in that. My addiction's coming at me in another form now, in the form of pornography, in the form of some other shit. You know what I mean? It's hard for me because it's trying to replace itself with another addiction. And that's what addiction does. It does it all the time. If it finds a weak spot, it's going to attack it. If you're new, you're in the right spot, man. This program will help you if you apply yourself. You know what I mean? If you don't really understand what's going on around here, just keep coming back and you will. Trust me, you will. I didn't understand a lot of shit in the beginning, but I understand a lot more than I did in the beginning. Because I try to apply in books like How It Works and Why and Living Clean. They help me a lot with all the stuff that I'm going through myself. Like I said, it's hard for me to deal with myself sometimes because I'm my own worst enemy. I get in situations, I thought when I got out of jail I was going to get hooked up with a woman. That didn't work out right, you know what I mean? Because I'm still dealing with my fucking self. It didn't work out right because I guess I wasn't happy with myself. You know what I mean? I'm trying to work on me first and foremost, and I can't be in any kind of relationship with anybody until I get myself totally right. I thought I had a grip on a lot of things. There's a couple of things that I don't have a whole grip on, you know what I mean? But I'm learning to deal with them in a positive way through this. The main thing for me is I got into this program and I committed to myself that I'm going to stay plugged into it just like I stayed plugged into the program in prison. I have a sponsor. I have a home group. I'm a GSR in my home group. When they asked me to share, I was skeptical at first, but when somebody asks you to do something in NA, I'll say it like this, when somebody asks me to do something in NA, I go and do it because in my hopes is that one person will hear something that I say that will help them. That's my main driving goal for doing what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm the GSR at my home group, and I bring an H&I meeting into a detox. Well, it's not a detox facility. It's actually like a 30-day program. It's a 30-day drug program down in Delaware. I bring one meeting in every 1 week a month. And I try to carry the message to other addicts to try to help them so they don't have to go through the same shit that I'm going through. I'm lucky I'm here. I'm really not supposed to be here. I mean, maybe I am supposed to be here. I'm not going to say that. But, you know, I was talking about this earlier, not on the way up here, but the car accidents that I've been in, that I should have been dead. There's just so many things, and there's so many things going on that I know truly now that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. This program has afforded me a life that I never thought was possible for myself. I couldn't imagine myself being clean 10 days, let alone a little over 10 years. Like I said, I try to keep it simple, man. I don't get caught up in other people's bullshit. I don't get caught up in gossip. I don't get caught up in shit. I work on me and try to keep myself grounded. And one thing that does help me keep me grounded is doing service work through NA. I can't tell you how much that keeps me grounded and helps me deal with myself. Because by me helping other people, it's helping me all the time. I heard a lot of great stuff here today, and I'm thankful for everybody that shared before me. I don't know how much time I can take up, man, but my story is simple, man, and it's just like everybody else's, man. I had to surrender. You know what I mean? That's the only way I could deal with what the fuck I'm dealing with. I had to get on my knees and surrender to the disease. You know what I mean? Because it was controlling my whole life, every aspect of my life. I couldn't live a manageable life. Now I got a halfway decent job and I got 2 bank accounts. I ain't never had that before in my life. No, never. It's crazy. Who'd have thought when I stopped using drugs my life would get better? You know what I mean? I never knew that. I couldn't see that before, but it's a reality. You know what I mean? Hey, the Narcotics Anonymous program is a great program, man. Thank everybody for listening. Thanks for letting me share.